Coming to you from sunny California and the Great White North. Get ready. We are breaking down the obstacles on the Armchair Ninja Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Armchair Ninja Podcast. It is Saturday, December 8th, 2018. My name is Rich, and joining me once again this week is Bijan. How are you making out?
I'm good, I guess, but finals sucks so much. I'm so glad it's almost done with. I have one more essay and I'm done, but I finished a 30-page term paper just yesterday, and man, I've just been sleeping like nonstop.
So you've been slaving away for weeks now, trying to get that paper together so that you could hand it in nice and crisp and clean.
Sure. We'll go ahead and say that. It's not like I did it all in like 2 nights. No, totally. I totally did it throughout the entire semester.
So this week, we've got a weird week. So what's happened, everyone, is apparently Canada's decided that we are okay with being a week behind on ANW Junior. So when they aired the 2 episodes back to back, which caused all the confusion on our last episode.
What a last minute mess that was, right? I remember like in the middle of recording, we're all like, what's going on?
Bathrobe Ninja, who are you even talking about? Like, I was so confused.
But sorry, continue, man.
Right. So this week we aired the episode that you had seen, episode 8. And so I haven't seen episode 9. So I think, I hate to say it, but we're going to end up a week behind on our coverage overall. It's not something that's readily available online anywhere. It's a little difficult to get these episodes. As some of you have told me, they've reached out saying you're having your own problems reaching or getting the episodes. I think we're just going to have to go with being a week behind, and I'm sorry for the inconvenience for all of you.
Yeah, whatever works, man.
So that being said, I didn't want to completely rehash Bijan's excellent, thorough coverage of episode 8 last week.
So detailed.
But I did take some notes. I did watch it myself. I'll give my thoughts on it, a quick summary, and then we're going to move on to another show. Kind of a last-minute decision, one that I've had people suggest to us over the last year or so. There's a show called Strong, which originally aired on NBC a couple years ago, but is now available on Netflix. So what we're going to do is we watch the first episode. We'll give our thoughts on that, and then you can decide for yourselves if you want to watch it or not. We're not going to do a full series coverage, but it's just to kind of give you an idea of what it is, because we had no idea.
Yeah, and just make it very clear, like, Strong was created by Dave Broom, the person that created Ultimate Beastmaster, so it shares a lot of similarities in its approach, and I guess in terms of its editing and such like that. But we'll get more into it.
Editing for sure. So let's get into it. Let's do a quick rundown of ANW Junior, and then we'll get into the meat of it with Strong.
Let's do it.
All right, so ANW Junior episode 8, you were not a big fan of, let's just say.
Yeah, man, it's like, I didn't hate it, but once again, I just thought it was there. I didn't have strong feelings of it in general, which I think sometimes could be worse.
Yeah, it's like, if you hate it, at least you're passionate about it, right? At least you kind of feel something. I get where you're coming from. So having watched it, I think there was more talent in this episode than I think you gave it credit for. So let me kind of run down the age groups and some thoughts on each of them. And then we'll kind of summarize the whole thing. Mm-hmm. So in the age 9-10 bracket, this is definitely where I feel like you were justified overall, that the quality, these kids are not winning the show. It's just not happening. But something weird happened that you didn't mention. There was a girl, Sienna Perez, who was really strong and fast, a national bouldering champion, and she was great in her first race. The problem is the second race, when she was, it got fast forwarded, but she fell on the cargo net coming off the TikTok. I think if she had stayed in it, she was a very strong contender. The problem is that she made one little slip up at the worst possible time. But yeah, Jack Cook ended up winning it. I did see the you call them the twins there, basically a little double back Jack and little Hercules.
They look so similar, right?
They did. They did look pretty similar. Jack Cook ended up winning it. He did okay. I mean, everybody did their personal best. I don't want to bash on any kids, but I don't think Jack really is going to hold up against some of the other competitors we've seen.
Yeah. Once again, nobody has to be like, it can't just be like the best of the best every episode or whatever. But at least, in relation to like their peers, like having fun dynamic matchups between them. And I think that was the issue, is that I don't even know how to put it in words, man. They were just there. They were just runs. There's nothing that stood out to me in terms of like two people going back and forth, the drama and everything involved.
Yeah, we definitely missed the drama in that age bracket for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And to some extent in the other one. So in the 11-12 bracket, we had Holden McNeil, who was quite good, and Josh Auer. He's the bathrobe ninja that you actually liked. Josh was the bathrobe ninja guy. Yeah, he was really good. He has a backyard course. I don't really dig the bathrobe thing, but whatever. Everybody needs their thing. Yeah, Josh ended up winning it all fairly easily. But like you said, there wasn't a lot of meat to it, right? It was not exciting runs. It was not a lot of back and forth. It was a decent race, the final one between Holden and him. Holden, who trains with Flip, fairly interesting. But yeah, it was just kind of there. Like you said, I don't have a whole lot to say on these either, so I kind of get where you're coming from. The one exception I'll say to this, so in the 13-14 age bracket, there was a great race. There was a really great race.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Between Lauren Hotchkiss and Brighton Myler. It was in the elimination round. So Lauren had fought, they fast forwarded her first race where she failed the wall 3 times. And when she ran her second race, the elimination race, she absolutely brought it. It was a fantastic race. It was very neck and neck. And this time she plowed off of the, I think it was the flywheels that she was attempting, and just ran, like dropped down, went up the wall, one attempt, just threw everything she had. She looked absolutely exhausted, but managed to finish the course. Like, it was such a great race. I loved that one. That one definitely stood out.
Yeah, that was one of the highlights of the episode for me, because the race was fun in itself, but also it was the personal, how do I say this? The personal achievement from her, because it's one of these things where, sometimes it's engaging seeing somebody struggle through a course. And while she didn't look weak or anything, it was clear, this wasn't going to be an easy cakewalk for her. But in her determination, in the fact that she had so much heart and grit, she just powered through everything and never stopped. And I think that's the key to what you're talking about at the end for this particular race, because at the end, she's already fallen or failed the warped wall 3 times. So psychologically, she's probably got a lot of doubts, or, I don't want to psychoanalyze, but, just if you were to be in her shoes, right? But yeah, she got off that penultimate obstacle and she didn't even hesitate. She just gave it her everything and just powered through it and just willed herself up that wall. And that was really cool. And not only that, but after she hit that buzzer, she was so elated, so happy. And that was really cool.
Yeah, I didn't know how she would hold up in the finals against Ethan Lil Dalla Bartnicki.
That's his real nickname, Lil Dalla?
Lil Dalla, he had a music video, right? And everything.
Yeah. So that was the other thing. Like, the storylines were kind of weak this episode, and the Lil Dalla one, it's a love-hate relationship, because the music video was kind of like ridiculous, but it was so ridiculous that I went the other way and I just started loving it, dude. It was so amazingly, like, I wouldn't even say awful, but like just ridiculous. Like, just the fact that you see this little kid, and no offense, but he didn't have a lot of flow, but he was still like rapping, and it's like, look, I'm 30 and I can't even rap, so it's like, whatever, right? But dude was like, they're just doing all cliches and everything. It was so amazing.
Yeah, that was the thing. It included everything you expect in those kinds of like diss tracks or all these new YouTube videos, right? He's flexing, he's got all, I don't know, it was good, it was funny. Like
video
said, it
effects,
did kind of cross over.
Tilting the camera, zooming in all close. It was ridiculous.
Man, But yeah, Ethan was actually really strong. Like, I thought that was his thing. I thought he was there mainly for story, but he was actually really good in all of his races. Lauren gave him a really good race, very close to until the end. He pulled away. He did all the things you expect from the faster ninjas, right? He's skipping over obstacles and steps and different things. So he's one to watch. I think he has a decent enough shot, but he probably isn't up there with the top.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we're talking about the oldest age bracket. That those like pretty much teenagers in that age bracket, there's some really, really fast kids in that one.
Yeah. All right. So overall, I might say it's the worst. I don't think it was terrible, but it was probably the worst episode of the season, worse than the one I watched. Maybe you should go back and watch that one. It might be okay for you. You're good, eh?
Maybe, but I'm not. It all depends on what's available to watch at the gym next time I'm there. But that said, even though it's the worst, once again, I wouldn't necessarily consider this like an awful hour of television or anything like that. It's still definitely worth watching. Every single great season's or show has to have its weakest episode, and hopefully this will be the weakest out of it, and it'll only get better from here on out.
I actually, you know what? Now that you say that, I would still put it on par with one of the weaker qualifiers, like some of the weeks of ANW proper in the qualifiers. I would say it's right about where you would say with a week of those where we're kind of going like, it was okay, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to Strong here. So, because I've been doing a lot of talking, let's give you a chance.
Oh, nobody wants that,
Well, here, I'll give a quick summary, and then we'll get some thoughts from you here. So what I didn't realize when we started watching this was that it's kind of like The Biggest Loser, I think was the comparison you made, and it's a good one. 10 women who are slightly out of shape, let's say, average women, being paired with top 10 of the top male physical trainers in the country.
So right off the bat, before we even go more into like the aesthetic of the show or whatever, like how do you feel about that? By the fact that we aren't having mixed gender or anything like that, it's basically focused on 10 women, and they're paired with 10 male like professional athletes training them. Are you cool with that? Did you find that weird? What were your thoughts?
Initially thought it was a little weird, and then realized the marketing side of it is probably pretty genius.
Yeah, I share the same sentiments. I still would have preferred it to be mixed gender, but I understand where they were going when I got the whole dynamic of the show. And once again, this aired on NBC, the same show, like channel that showed Biggest Loser, and I have to imagine they're going for the same target audience. The main target audience for The Biggest Loser was middle-aged, primarily female mothers, And I gotta say, I was a diehard Biggest Loser fan. I've watched every single season. I had a lot of criticism for that show, but it's still one of those things you got to go with the growing pains. And one thing that I did like about this show, and we'll get into it in a bit, is that it did address some of the shortcomings of The Biggest Loser. But go ahead, man.
Nice. So they competed side by side with their trainers. So they would work with one-on-one with a trainer and then compete with them against the other teams. And then at the end of the week, two teams would compete in an Elimination Tower, and the final winner of the whole season would win $500,000. Yeah,
I mean that's a lot of money, man. And one key thing is that on this show it does share what the heck is it called? MTV Challenge rules in terms of eliminations or whatever you want to call it. And what I mean by that, if you're not familiar with the MTV's The Challenge, because I'm sure a lot of people are like, oh, that show, MTV, oh. Basically, they all the teams compete in this elimination challenge, and kind of reverse of Survivor, where one person wins and is, ineligible to be voted out. The one team that wins basically gets to choose who to send to elimination, paired with the team that does the least. So, if a challenge, were to do a race, like just a race, the team that did the worst is automatically into the elimination challenge. Now, it doesn't matter where any of the other teams are at. The team that wins gets to choose anybody of the group to go against the other team. And that's where it develops a lot of the strategy involved. Because obviously you can choose the two weakest teams, but it might be smarter to pair the team that does the worst with one of the stronger teams in efforts to get out one of those stronger teams. Just saying.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a weird mix and a weird strategy decision. So we'll get into that as it progresses. Before we get into that, I'd actually like to talk a little about the training itself, because that was interesting to me. Way more interesting than I would have thought. Because, well, I guess actually before we get into the training, let's talk about how they chose their trainers. Let's do that first.
Ridiculous.
That was crazy, right? It wasn't just me.
No, it was dumb, man. I mean, there's so many better ways of... How do I say this? When it comes to training, there has to be a level of trust and relationship built between the person and the trainer. And why don't, the way they did it, and you should describe it for the listeners, I mean, it just had none of that.
Yeah, it was foolish because, especially when we see how they all train and how they respond and, a lot more about these trainers, rather than learning that, okay, this trainer is going to be very boxing focused and this one's going to do this. They just had the trainers straight up compete against each other by breaking concrete blocks and pulling something heavy up, right? So they had to use a handle to lift a 500-pound hammerhead 30 feet up in the air. Just make them compete, and then the women who went in a random order just basically chose who they saw who did the best, right? Like the first person picked the guy who got first, because why wouldn't you?
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with how well you're going to work as a trainer.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, and not only that, but they just targeted two different muscle groups. Hey, guess what? Somebody with bigger arms than me is going to do well in this challenge because it's based on a bunch of arm strength and leg strength. But guess what? If they had a race, it might be a little different, or, any variety of different things. They just tackled two talents of literally who's the strongest. That has nothing to do with anything. And if you watch The Biggest Loser, there are varieties of the psychological aspects of connecting with the person that you're trying to train. If you don't have a connection with your trainer, you won't be able to push yourself that much further. I mean, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I'm just saying it's so much harder if you just have this random person yelling at you. In Biggest Loser, there were two main trainers, Jillian Hall and Bob Harper. And Bob Harper was more of the, let me get to know you. Let me psychoanalyze. Let me have a little bit more of a guiding stick, a little bit more calming. And Jillian Hall was a little bit more militaristic, where she's yelling in your face and driving you to do that. And both ways work, but they only work with a certain type of people, My brother's very sensitive. I can't yell in his face and tell him to do something, because then he's just going to nope out. Whereas if somebody yells at me, I'm going to be driven a lot more to do it. And that's just two different ways, But we're talking about 10 different trainers that all have 10 completely different approaches to how training's done. Not only that, but the ways of training. We saw from all their different backgrounds, some guys are just boxing. Some guys are doing some weird transitions on the ground. Some guys are literally having their partner hold onto their chest and move around with them. A variety of different training methods. This is the stuff that matters. This is the stuff that those women should be seeing and being able to decide upon. I'm sorry, yeah. Rant over. You go ahead, man.
No, I agree with everything. That's why I let you go, because 100%. Maybe they had more information. Maybe we don't know that they watched videos and learned about all of them before they went there. I don't know. But the way they
look like
presented it certainly didn't seem like it, right? They just catcalled at the guys as they were doing the whole thing.
Yeah, they literally had a lady choose a guy because he was the hottest. I mean,
it's just not right. It really isn't. But the training segments were cool. I thought it was interesting to see how all the different approaches you can take to getting more fit and how to help someone and coach. And like you said, psychoanalyze. Like there was like practically therapy sessions going on through this thing.
yeah, but Rich, have you ever seen The Biggest Loser? It's okay if you haven't. I just don't know.
I watched a couple episodes, but it was years ago.
Gotcha. So one big thing that, in my opinion, got really stale by the end is every episode there had to be one of the trainers walk up to one of the contestants and sit down with them and talk to them. And then the contestants would cry for 20 minutes telling their story. And, in the earlier seasons, it felt genuine and felt earned. But by the end, it just felt like it's the same old. And it felt ungenuine by the fact that it was always the same go around of, oh, now it's my turn to cry and tell you why I'm so insecure or whatever. And it's like, not everybody's like that, man. You can't just say, like, I became obese because I'm insecure. There's a variety of reasons. And, one thing that I like is that on this show, they respect the contestants and the fact that, they really give genuine backgrounds and they don't have to have a sob story every contestant, and they don't almost drown it out. Like it's not, if there was one part where a contestant did cry, but they didn't linger on it. It was like 5 minutes and it was earned and genuine. And the trainer was also crying and telling them, having that connection. And that's a true bonding moment. And I think that's one thing that I liked about the show is that things felt less fake and much more earned. Just from a background of not having any of that, watching any of that, or from Biggest Loser or whatever, did you feel the same way, Rich?
Yeah, I guess I didn't have a chance to kind of get overwhelmed, or I wasn't waiting for those big teary moments. At one point, I thought it was too much, mainly because I didn't know how long it had been. I was like, how can they possibly get this dramatic and say you've changed my life? And because I had the impression it was like a day, right? I was like, okay, I think it's a bit much. But later on, they mentioned about it being a week, and I noticed, okay, I think it's been a week, which a week is a pretty long time if you're doing intense training. I guess I could see getting a pretty good bond from that, sure.
And how did you feel about... Sorry,
I just want to say quick, you mentioned about Leon, I think his name was Leon, and Victoria. She was getting emotional, basically saying that he wouldn't understand, he's a winner. And his explanation of hey, I don't always win. I was, I've done really well at things, but I didn't get drafted, or he mentions these situations where he just missed out on the Olympic team and things like that. Even when you're a top athlete, or maybe even especially as a top athlete, you're going to have to deal with loss.
Mm-hmm. It's the psychological aspect where it's just because somebody is perceived to achieve a lot, in their own mind, they might not see themselves as that.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the more interesting parts of the episode. So let's get into some of the nitty gritty here, because they had a power challenge, they called it. This was the competition that you said the last place goes to elimination, then the winner decides which teams goes with them. So they had to do this 30-foot climb up a wall with the trainers on one side of the wall and the trainees on the other. And they had these pegs. It was like a giant peg wall, and these pegs were long enough to slide through the wall so they could both use it, and they had to work together to get to the top. What did you think of that obstacle?
I thought it was really cool. I thought that, it works on different muscle groups that they train. So, off the bat, it's not instantly, oh, let's see if you can run far or how strong you are. It deals with a unique sense of abilities. And not just that, but you have to work in tandem together. And that's the most important part for me, is that in Biggest Loser, in shows like it, it doesn't have to be Biggest Loser, but in most of the shows like this, it all comes down to which contestant can lose the most weight, which has led to a variety of controversy and problems in that aesthetic. I don't want to get into it, but let's just say there's been a lot of unhealthy incentives from that viewpoint. So with this, it's more of how much can you work with your trainer, building that relationship and working in tandem. And the trainer has to struggle just as much as the person there. So I really like that dynamic. And I don't know, you kind of get to really genuinely feel for the bonds being made between these two people. Did you feel the same way, or am I just just more into it, man?
No, I think that's it, because I thought it was a great obstacle, especially for what they're trying to accomplish. I think the more you say it, the more I realize it's almost like this show was throwing shade at Biggest Loser a few times, because they really hammered home the message that this is not about getting skinny. This is about getting strong. Like, it's like the whole thing of the show. So
I love that, man. I love it.
So, but yeah, it is very much about the relationship and the dynamic between the two. And that obstacle requires a lot of coordination, a lot of teamwork. And, yes, the trainer can kind of make things more difficult for themselves and easier by, having more pegs, having the pegs stick out in the right places for their teammate and kind of taking on the more difficult side themselves. But it really requires both of them to do a lot of work. And it's a mental challenge too, right? They've got to decide where to move the pegs, and it's interesting. It's a really interesting obstacle.
It's a variety of different elements involved in it, similar to, American Ninja Warrior and different obstacle shows. And not just that, I mean, one thing that I can't hammer home enough is that it's not only about the contestant. You build a genuine relationship and feeling for the trainer as well. As a matter of fact, some of the trainers were amazing. By the way, there were two trainers right off the bat that I absolutely fell in love with. One was the MMA guy. I forget his name, but he was kind of like the star of this episode. Clearly, this guy, incredibly charismatic and personable to cameras, and just a amazing personable person. But then there was this guy named Kai, who's just super eccentric, like a Latin guy. He's got like one of the youngest, women, and he's like, your butt's good, but it's got to get better, and all this stuff, having these crazy quotes, right? And Rich, I mean, I don't even know if it's PG, but he had the greatest quote I've ever heard on a television show, where he says something to the effects of, this climb was so, intimidating, The last time I had such an intense climb was a 6-foot model or something like that in my younger years. And I'm like, oh my God, that aired on television?
Yeah, so, I don't know. He was creepy. I mean, at the bottom line, you can call him personable. You can call him a lot of things. That dude was straight up creepy.
He was, but it was so funny, man. He definitely had quotes that most people would cringe at, where it's like, oh, are you allowed to say that? He just went all in, If you're gonna be creepy, you might as well go all in. And
he did that. He made it entertaining. I will grant you that. He kept the show. He kept a good variety to the episode. That's for sure.
Hey, the good news is he was paired with a woman that was as fun and accepting of him. Somebody like him cannot have a woman that's a little bit more conservative or prudish, and nothing wrong with that. But some women might not feel comfortable with a trainer like that. Luckily, his contestant was a little bit more chill.
Yeah, I think she's also not going to take it for too long. I think there will be some drama around that if we do.
Hey, even more entertainment, dude. That's what I want. I want genuine drama and entertainment rather than some fake stuff.
Well, speaking of some genuine drama, we got it because when the white team won, Adam and Cece, they had to choose who to send to the Elimination Tower, and I kind of thought it was going to be boring. I really, they're just going to choose the second to last team just to keep things straight, because they talked through it a bit and it kind of looked like they were going to go that way, and then they basically blindside Benny and Jill, the number one contenders, just
the de facto number one contenders. I mean, they clearly were the strongest.
Benny the trainer got a little intense.
A little? Well, first of all, before we even get into Benny's reaction, did you think this was the right move for them?
No, not at all.
Really?
Absolutely not. No, and I got a couple reasons. So I'd like to hear yours first, because I was thinking when I watched it that you're probably going to say that was the way to go.
Well, I mean, just watching shows like this, from the challenge, it's never a position that you want to be in. The one thing that people usually say is, like, it might not be the best thing to be the winner when it comes to the first week, because you have to instantly make an enemy. That said, genuine human being Bijan would be like, oh, choose the team that's the second weakest, have it fair, and, you make no enemies. The contestant Bijan that wants to be, hey, there's a reason the MMA guy is the star of this episode. If you want to make good, genuine television, you got to bring that drama. And they brought that drama. And you know what? Go for it. This is a show. You gotta go for it. And honestly, I felt like, all things considered, I felt like Benny kind of came off looking worse than anybody else. So why don't you give your thoughts and the reaction?
So, first off, I completely thought that whoever won that challenge was an idiot. Like, get second place. Do not get first in the first competition. You are 100% putting a target in your back because you're going to make an enemy day one. And yeah, so that part's fine. Once they won it, I think they really should have picked. I think as the competition goes on, perfectly fine. Pick the strongest team by all means. Just not week one. I think it's a really bad decision. I think it really paints you in a bad light. And I think Benny scared some people, maybe enough that they won't even put him up for fear of his reaction. Because he ghosted Adam, won't even talk to him afterwards. Just really called him out in front of everyone.
Did you consider it, like, say that he called him out? Because I had a different approach. I kind of felt like he just had a giant temper tantrum.
No, I think he would have been fine. He seems like a genuine nice guy. Like, he really comes across great in all the other interviews and stuff. I think his problem is that Adam went up to him and said he wasn't putting him up. If he hadn't said that, I think Benny would have been fine with it. He would have been like, all right, cool, game on, let's go. And he kind of basically said that to Rails, hey, look, it's a competition show. Hey, we're all going to get up. We're all going to pick it up. That's fine. But basically, you backstabbed me. You told me you weren't putting me up. Why did you even sit me down to turn around and do that?
I mean, it's fair.
I don't think it was a good idea at all. Like, it obviously wasn't. It really did not go well for him.
I mean, I think that team made many mistakes.
But here, straight up competition-wise, I think it was a really bad move. Really, really bad move. For one main reason. He's just given one of the strongest competitors in the game several advantages. One, made him angry. He made them want to win even more. But more importantly, they've now done the Elimination Tower against the easiest competitor in the whole thing. They've had a practice run.
Do you think the Elimination Tower is going to change every episode, or do you think it's going to be the same?
I think it's going to be the same.
So this is a key component, is I agree. The Elimination Tower, if its state remains the same, they do have a leg up. Also, one fact that can go either way is, when it comes to this format, one thing that we haven't talked about is, more than any other thing about the show, athleticism or anything else, it's about the social aspects and teamwork and the alliances that you make. And some people are very much drawn away from this. But if there's an alliance where, Benny, the team that's the guy that had the temper tantrum, aligns with 5 other teams, the rest of the teams that are, drawn out, they're just going to pick the rest of the teams off if Benny wins every single challenge, or any of the other 5, It's very much about alliances.
Yeah. Yeah, and Benny will very easily get maybe not 5 other teams. That seems like a lot, but 2 other strong teams, core 3 of them that they can just pick everyone else off. That seems like a really strong, really good way to get through this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on how people were perceived. The other team, I forget their name. I'm sorry, but the team that won, they could be viewed as schemers, but at the same time, Benny, his temper tantrum really, guys, was very. He was over the top. He was extremely angry, and he was shouting and overly emotional, and that can turn off a lot of people. I could see a lot of trainers and teams being put off by that and being like, okay, you're too much. You're too sensitive. Like, let me go with the team that actually has a clear head on their shoulders. So it can go either way.
I actually might watch more of these. I might actually keep going. We'll see. Yeah. It was pretty good. I liked it.
I will say this. This was a very entertaining show. I'm curious to see how... if the format gets stale later on, because we've seen this before from Ultimate Beastmaster. By the way, the graphics and everything from the show was straight out of Ultimate Beastmaster. Like the same people behind it, just clearly it's Ultimate Beastmaster meets Biggest Loser, and there you go.
That's it.
But yeah, I could see this being a very entertaining show. It only lasted 1 season, but I think this show might have been, it was in that middle ground between Biggest Loser, old school reality shows, and the rise of more of the obstacle course shows that's more modern day with Titan Games and, obviously Ninja Warrior, but like all the other stuff, so I think this was like right in between them.
We kind of jumped to the end here. The Elimination Tower was interesting. I don't know if I want to go through all the obstacles, but it had some interesting things. So basically, picture, I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like a building. Like it's really quite a big set piece. The 2 teams enter, and they've got to get to the top first and complete all these challenges on the way up, including things where they have to do like a leg press over and over again to lift their teammate up to the next level, and then the trainer has to do squats to move their teammate up. Like some really cool stuff they had in there.
Yeah, and I like the fact that it tested not only the contestant but the trainer themselves. And the trainer didn't have like an easy time doing it. Like the trainer really had to like put in their weight and like really test themselves. And I like the fact that it tested a variety of different muscle groups and techniques. There was one part where it was like a cylinder, like I don't even know how to describe it. Never mind. You're better at the descriptions of obstacles, Rich. But yeah, definitely there was a lot of testing involved with people's wills and athletic, I guess. You know what? You go ahead, Rich. My brain just shut off.
No problem. I do want to mention, so they call it a rotating coil ladder.
There you go.
Way up in this thing. And as soon as I saw it, I thought, it's a little early for that, isn't it? Like, that's a straight up difficult obstacle, I would say, especially for someone that's just starting their fitness journey. And this poor Victoria, who their team got there first, they were the ones that had lost the challenge.
By the way, this is what I was talking about, where it might be a good idea to have what do you call it? The biggest threat against the lowest, the weakest team. Because the weakest team, it all depends on the obstacle. It doesn't matter, like, the weakest team can always win. It just depends on the obstacle they're taking. And at this point, the weakest team going against the strongest team, the weakest team's winning by a full obstacle.
Yeah, they were doing great until they hit this plateau here. And Victoria just straight up could not do this obstacle, which was really frustrating to watch. I really felt for her. It looked really difficult, and she was trying her hardest, and she just couldn't do it.
Okay, do you put some blame on the trainer, though? Because the way she was doing this obstacle was way harder than it needed to be.
Well, I think after she had tried it 2 or 3 times. Yeah, I think the first couple times she didn't really have a good technique, and then she was just too tired. Like, she just couldn't get the strength to do it after that.
Yeah, but see, the way this obstacle is designed, everyone, is that in the middle of this coil, it's cylindrical, right? It kind of looks like a DNA strand is the best way to describe it. So like the DNA strand, in the middle part, it spins. And if you were able to, if the trainer, who can, turn this sphere, this thing, right? This coil, if he can make it to where their contestant, the person that they're trying to, help out, is basically doing a like a ladder climb or a bridge climb. How would you describe monkey bars? Thank you.
Monkey bars, yeah.
Yeah, monkey bars. So they can do it that way. But the way she did it was basically holding on to the end where the rungs are a lot wider, so she doesn't have as good of a grip, and basically has to put all of her weight downwards and climb upwards up each and every strand portion. He made it so much more difficult for her, where if she were to stay in the middle, she'd have smaller bars and basically move forwards where her momentum wouldn't always be stopped. And that's what we saw with the other team. And I felt like that was a far easier way to get through this thing. But he never gave her that chance.
Yeah, I think that it was pretty key. And I think it kind of demonstrates that they're trainers and they're experts in strength and things like that. Not necessarily obstacle experts, right? And most of them anyway. They could be MMA fighters and different things, but looking at this obstacle and figuring out the most efficient way to get through it may not be Benny's strength.
The other guy's strength.
Or the other guy's strength. Benny was the guy that actually did figure it out.
And that's what I like also, is the fact that it's not only the women that this is testing. It's also the men. It's also the trainers. Just because a guy is strong doesn't mean he's going to figure out an obstacle. I love that aspect.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So they did end up winning. Benny and Jill took it home. But I thought it was bad at first, and I kind of thought, like, this is kind of a sad start to the season. But I loved that Victoria did not give up. She made like 9 or 10 attempts on that thing. She just kept trying, even though there seemed to be no hope she was going to complete it. Her trainer Leon just kept saying, like, I don't care. Like, if you can't do it, that's fine. As long as you keep trying, that tells me that that this was worth it. And she did. She just kept going up and falling and falling. And I got to tell you, I've got like post-traumatic stress here. Watching her fall, I was just like cringing every single time.
I didn't think about that, but yeah, I can see how you're like, bend the knees like, every time.
Don't fall that way. No. Fall back.
Yeah. That said, I enjoyed the show for what it was, and I do think it built for a first episode. It built a lot of drama for future episodes, so it definitely made you want to see where this feud would go. Also, I gotta say, like, this Benny guy was sizing up the MMA guy like he was gonna do something. All right, like, you can be as all strong as you want to be, chances are very slim that you're going to beat up an MMA fighter. Just saying. I'm like, You need to calm down, bro, because that is not an area you want to test. Also, similar to Biggest Loser, I really like the fact that we got to see, overall transformation of the contestant. The women on the show weren't obese. It's not Biggest Loser where it's just, let me find the largest person available that really needs help. It's more of, these women are just a little out of shape, and you want to see them get stronger, which the fact that I enjoyed this is because they can actually participate in a lot of things. They can actually do athletic feats to a degree, right? They're kind of like the everyday person, and I really like that.
Yeah, it was a dramatic shift. So once it was all said and done, the lady that couldn't make it through, they said, which I thought was fantastic, that even though they lost, they get to continue training through the National Academy of Sports Medicine, which I presume meant with the current trainer she had. And then they showed her transformation in a little segment after that, where she went from a size 16 down to a size 8. Like, that's very, very dramatic change.
Yeah, not just that. Like, once again, it's not about the weight loss, but the strength. She was fit. That, like, even more than her waist size, like, she just looked so strong and fit. Like, she had toned arms and shoulders, and she looked so happy. And that's the key that I always hated about Biggest Loser, is that, you know, there were some seasons where the winner would, like, at the end, they looked unhealthy because they were too small. You know, they were so focused on losing weight that they almost went to anorexia, and that's not healthy either. So I like the fact that they're not promoting, hey, be as skinny as possible. It's about being fit. It's about being happy and being toned, you know? So one person's definition of being athletic and healthy is different from another's. And I like the fact that they promote that, because I felt like that's a much stronger and healthier message to send to people.
So yeah, great episode. I enjoyed it. Like I said, I know we're not covering it. I may watch it, though. If you guys have watched it and you want to give us your opinion, I'd love to hear if you enjoyed it, didn't like it, if you had any problems with it. Let us know.
Yeah. We're just like 3 years late, you know? Whatever.
2 years. It's only been 2 years.
Yeah.
All right. So that is it for this week. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can reach me as rich@ninjapodcast.com. I am at Ninja Podcast on both Instagram and Twitter. And Bijan, how can they reach you?
And we have a Twitter and Instagram at Bijan151. That is BIJAN 151.
All right. Thank you all so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful week.
Peace and all the love, y'all.